the last 30, 40, 50 years have been the exception to the rule.
That's right.
When I woke up on Yom Kippur morning in 1973, my father had a look of terror on his face because Israel had been attacked again. And this was only a couple decades after the Holocaust, which destroyed hundreds of members of my family. This is what it is like to be Jewish in this world.
I know there are people wondering how is it possible that Israel's border was breached in that way?
Well, people also asked on 9/11, how is it possible? And when they don't understand, or when there's a certain sort of cognitive dissonance about something awful happening, there is a desire to come up with explanations, and then we come up with explanations that often are libelous, defamatory, and horrible. The fact is, in human events, it is always easier to destroy than to build. It is always easier to undermine than to create. And the State of Israel is an extraordinary creation that would not have been possible without God's providence and extraordinary blessings. But humans will always find ways to destroy things, especially things that make them feel inferior and make them feel that someone else has something that they don't have. And that has been a problem in that part of the country for a very long time. There is, among many Jews in particular, and many others, a myth that the Israeli military and intelligence capabilities are nearly divine themselves, and that the only way something like this could have happened is that it was allowed to happen. Why? Because the Mossad knows everything. Whatever the NSA doesn't know, the Mossad knows, and they probably both know all the same things. That's not true. Ultimately, and ask anyone who works in software, cybersecurity, hackers will always be a step ahead. It's easier to infiltrate, easier to destroy, and that's what happened here. If you don't think like a wicked person, you will never really understand the mind and the capability for wickedness that evil people have.
I mean, look, I'm saying this about China. I mean, the idea that we have an open southern border, this is sheer lunacy to the point of satanic, because evil actors, they're looking for an opening. They have nothing better to do. They live to find an opening, a way in. And if you don't think China is doing that with the United States, if you don't think, and so you have to really be aware that evil exists. There are people whose life goal is to do any number of these horrible things. And if you're not aware of that, you're a fool. And I think there's no doubt that the current occupant of the White House is a fool, and that they don't understand this kind of thing. We know Israel is not. We know that Israel has been vigilant, has understood the threats against it. But as you say, nonetheless, these horrors are possible. You're Jewish, so I want to talk to you about what's happening in Israel. Whatever thoughts you have on that.
Well, I've got a friend on social media who recently became Jewish. She converted to Judaism, Cassie Dillon. We've been internet friends for many years. And she completed the conversion process only a couple of months ago. And the massacre that took place was on the second day of the Jewish, here it was the second day. In Israel, it was already the end of they don't have the 2-day festival. They have the 1 day. So the information started to sort of bleed into our communities during that the night of the end of the first day. And Cassie was talking about, she mentioned on Twitter, here I just got on my Jewish suit, and I had such a nice holiday planned, and this is just so awful. And I responded to her, welcome to being Jewish. Now you've really made it. Now, because this is what the last 30, 40, 50 years have been the exception to the rule.
That's right.
When I woke up on Yom Kippur morning in 1973, my father had a look of terror on his face because Israel had been attacked again. And this was only a couple decades after the Holocaust, which destroyed hundreds of members of my family. This is what it is like to be Jewish in this world. This is, for some reason, and there are many, and we understand them well, but not everyone necessarily agrees with how they trend. This is part of the mission that God has given to Israel, the people Israel, to in this world, which is to be the first ones, and very often the most acutely affected ones, to identify forces of evil.
It's interesting because, speaking as a Christian, it seems to me that the Christian faith has a more sophisticated or explicit understanding of evil, satanic, whatever. And whenever I talk to my Jewish friends, it doesn't seem to be as clear. And yet, I would say, when people say, why is Israel, why are evil people always trying to kill the Jews? Well, because the devil hates those whom God loves. The devil hates anyone who identifies with God, and that's going all the way back to the Garden of Eden, which is in Genesis, which I believe is in the Old Testament. Am I getting that right? But it is interesting, because what we're talking about is evil. How else do you describe it?
And it is actually so evil, and I haven't really found a way to, and I'm usually good at finding ways, I haven't really found a way to explain why this particular incident, it has, to so many people, come across and hit them as a difference in type, not merely in quantity. There are people whose eyes definitely have been opened.
Oh, I mean, look, to me, it's easy. This is not, when people say somebody were killed, no, they weren't killed, they were murdered. There's a difference. There's a difference when somebody sends in a missile and people are killed. This was murder. This was deliberate, evil murder of innocents. That's different than, some tanks from Jordan or some tanks committed.
It was very personal.
It's very different when you go in and viciously murder innocents deliberately. When you take hostages, it's a completely different order of
inhumanity.
Well, yeah. So it's dramatically more brazen. Again, it's one thing when military comes in. That's bad enough. This is the difference between the German army and the SS going into Poland, murdering people, murdering babies. That's any human being says this is different. This is evil. That's what we're seeing right now.
There's no question about it. And someone asked me, what can Christians do? How can Christians help? And I thought about that. I mean, one thing is, certainly when I'm involved in my social media polemics and I see a Christian standing up to defend the Jewish people and the state of Israel, which are not exactly the same thing, it makes my job a lot easier. But the harder task is for Christians to be Christian. What you do and what your guests and your community does to rebuild faith in this country and to return us to a source of, to make America a source of spiritual strength instead of weakness, that is what everyone needs. That's what the world needs for good to triumph.
I think there's no doubt about that. And I wrote a book called If You Can Keep It, where I hadn't really understood the connection, really clearly understood the connection between American freedom, self-government, and virtue and faith, and how the God of the Bible figured into that and whatever. And so many people try to say that's nonsense. It's not nonsense. Freedom comes from God. This nation has to look back to Israel, a covenant community, covenanting directly with God. And there's just no doubt the connection between freedom and faith in the God of the Bible. There's just no way around it. And we're if you don't get that, you can't possibly understand what freedom is or what tyranny is. It's all part of it.